On Gyno Curious, I have talked again and again with guests about just how essential movement and exercise are to our overall health. And the science backs this up completely. Physical activity is key to healthy aging, and the research is clear. No matter when you start moving, it makes a difference. Starting an active lifestyle at any age improves physical capacity, brain health, and longevity. Of course, getting started is one of the biggest hurdles for many people, myself included. For some, they have been training competitively since they were young, and for others, exercise comes in fits and starts. And for most of us, the kind of movement we love or can do naturally shifts over time. What worked in my 20s simply doesn't work the same way in my 60s. So today we're diving into some movement practices you may never have heard of, one that could be wonderfully fit for your body right now, supporting both your health and your well-being as you move through the decades. Welcome to Gyno Curious. I'm your host and creator, Dr. Amy Novat. From both sides of the speculum, we're here to investigate what it means to be a healer and to be healed. Please send comments and questions to radiofreerhiniecliff.org. And if you're interested in my clinical practice, please go to dramynovat.com. So my guests today are Charlessa Thatcher and Theda Zaweza. They are both coming to the studio from DC and from the Hudson Valley, right, ladies?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Charlessa is a Tai Chi Easy Senior Trainer, a certified Qigong instructor, a certified trauma professional, and yoga teacher. She integrates movement, mindfulness, and energy work to support holistic well-being. Theda is a Qigong and Tai Chi teacher as well, a massage practitioner and empowered relief instructor. She earned her Doctor of Philosophy degree in policy analysis research from UC Santa Barbara and served 30 years in the U.S. federal government as an education policy analyst. She is committed to sharing Qigong and other energy medicines with traditionally underserved communities, especially people in recovery, transition, and or chronic pain. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's such a pleasure to have you both. I don't usually have two guests on the show, so I love that we're doing this because, of course, we're going to talk about how it is that you two came to work together and kind of what you're doing individually. Theda, I want to start with you because it's a little bit unusual for a PhD in philosophy and policy analysis to becoming a teacher of energy medicines. Can you talk about that kind of life arc for us?
Absolutely, Amy. First, thank you very much for having us. And hello to your listeners. Your opening described me to a T. As I aged, I realized I would need something, some kind of movement to keep me healthy and active. And when I was younger, I did yoga, I practiced yoga, I was in track, I was, as you said, some people were training their entire lives. I was very active. And then slowly I began to become a kind of behind the computer person and not being active. And so from Reagan until Trump, I was on the Hill. And if that's any indication, I was stressed out. I had a dysregulated nervous system, and I was really looking for something that could relieve some of the stress, but at the same time was not as physically demanding as yoga. So I went to a local yoga studio and took a Qigong class. And that first class, tears came to my eyes. It was as
Oh,
though my body said, yes, thank you, you're home now. And that's how I came to it. I was in an arena, like many people who are in corporate America or any demanding job, that requires you to give above and beyond maybe what your life work balance would say would be optimal. We want to maintain a balance, but we also want to do a good job at work. So I was overextending and overwhelmed by my work. And Qigong was able to help me come back to myself, cultivate some calm in my living, and trained my awareness to be aware when I was overextending and not. So that's how I came to Qigong.
Yeah, yeah. Charlessa, would you say that becoming a teacher of Qigong and yoga also emanated out of kind of a need to find some boundaries in your life, find new ways of movement? What is your kind of professional arc and how you came to be a teacher of these practices?
Thanks for asking. And thank you, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. What happened for me is I started my career out of undergraduate working for the probation department. And I worked with a variety of different populations during that time frame. But I saw how it was a very stressful job. And I felt that the people that I was working with was also dealing with so much. And I wish I had some other options to help. And so at the same time was teaching yoga on the side. And I realized that I wanted to bring it more into what I was doing with the probationers that I was working with. And I was working with kids that were in a special program prior to going into the official court system. And in that program, I felt that it was really helpful to do breathing techniques and movement techniques. And that was before I was really involved with Tai Chi and Qigong. But then also, I found that during that time frame, I moved in different careers in the county government. I started working with county employees.
Mm,
And with the county employees, I found that everybody was, very stressed, overworked, not paid enough, that whole kind of thing. And I was doing trainings for the county at that time. So I developed a office yoga class for county employees so that they could, come in and find sanctuary in their own rooms, in their own offices, by finding techniques that they could use to do self-healing. And one of the things that back then I used to say is, it's okay if you make those loud sounds of exhaling, letting go, because, sometimes we really need that. And my coworkers got used to that because I would say, deep breath in, and we, ah. And, it became, it was funny, but truly they started to say, it's okay. It's okay to do these activities. And then when I worked in the school systems, again, noticing, the teachers, the staff, the students from the preschoolers all the way up were in a time when everybody is doing overworked and trying so hard. And I found that these techniques were really helpful. So I
yeah,
started using them there as well.
great. I want to come back to a conversation about the teaching of these practices to communities that would probably not have a great deal exposure to them throughout their lifetimes. I'm going to come back to that because I think it's really important. But I want to, before we go much further, is there's going to be listeners out there who are saying, what's Qigong? What's Tai Chi? So, most people have heard of yoga. That's kind of well understood. I mean, people may not understand the intricacies, but they know that there are yoga studios, on every corner and that people are practicing. But would you guys talk about how Tai Chi and Qigong are related and yet different, please?
Okay, I'll start. For those who don't know, are not familiar with Qigong, I'm hoping in 10 years there'll be a Qigong studio in every strip mall and across the country. But Qigong, it's simply Qi is energy or life force energy, and then Gong is work or practice. So it's energy work or life force practice. And we're working to become more aware of ourselves, our inner workings, our outer workings, how we function and dysfunction, how we're related to nature, and we are nature. So Qigong helps a person turn inward, become a little more unhurried, slow down, and by coordinating breath, movements, gentle movements, meditation, and self applied massage, that combination can have an extremely positive health benefit. So that's Qigong. Qigong usually Most of the movements are simultaneous, so the hands will both be doing the same thing, the feet will pretty much be doing the same thing. Tai Chi, which translates as supreme ultimate, is a type of Qigong. But this type of Qigong, it's more for balancing, harmonizing your life with the Qi or life force that you've cultivated doing Qigong. It's a little bit more complicated, have hands moving differently and a lot of foot movement. But Tai Chi is a type of Qigong.
So, what's this chi thing you're talking about? Talk to me about what does chi mean? And, I also know that it interfaces with meridians, much like acupuncturists talk about channels of energy. Can you explain to the audience what Theta is talking about in terms of how this movement is the cultivation of chi?
Well, Qigong came from Chinese medicine. That's where it originated from. And when we practice Qigong, we're practicing bringing in the energy around us, from the trees and from nature, and bring it into our bodies as we inhale. And then it goes through different channels through our bodies. I could say it as if I'm focusing on my lungs and I have congestion in my lungs and I want to cleanse my lungs, I would bring in the chi, the energy, into my body through the breath, focusing my mind on my lungs. And there's certain, we call them meridians, but they're like rivers, right? Rivers of energy that flow through our body. And so in this particular case, the lungs is the place in which the energy would come. So they go down through, it would be the reservoir. That was the word I was thinking. So we have the rivers of meridian coming into the lungs, the reservoir, and that's where the medicine will take place, where we'll help to cleanse. And our mind is so important. We want to focus on, okay, breathing and clearing out what is either physically in the lungs, in this particular case, with breathing and exhaling out. Sometimes there's sounds that can go along with it to help with that. And there's also emotions that are attached to our organs. And I'm talking about the 5 major organs, but there's so much more, a lot more complicated than that, but just to be simplistic. So we are connected with the universe, right? What's above, and connected with the earth and the biosphere around us. And we bring all of that within us with the breath. And then we exhale and let go of what we don't need. Would you like to add more to that, Theda, to help with?
Well, no, I think you covered it pretty well. As Charlessa said, Qigong is one of the 4 pillars of traditional Chinese medicine. Mm-hmm. And all of them deal with qi or energy, be it acupuncture, the herbs that they have, qigong, and acupressure. So they're based on a map of the body, as Charlessa said, meridians or channels that run through our body. There's certain that are rivers, some are little tributaries, some are reservoirs. And those areas feed, as she said, our organs and all of our cells. So the Qigong does the same thing as acupressure or acupuncture without the needles and the pointing, the push. We can do it to ourselves. And so this is a very empowering way to do self-healing.
Mm-hmm. So, I've worked in the world of allopathic medicine for a long time now. And what I've discovered about Gyno Curious is I'm speaking to a real mixture of those who are healers in the Western tradition, allopathy, osteopathy, and then folks who are doing alternative healing, Eastern healing modalities. And I do find that some of my listeners will ask me, like, why are you talking about those modalities? How do you mix the two? Isn't allopathic medicine really the only way to go? So I'm sure I'm not the only one who's being asked that. I'm sure you too encounter folks who say, what? Energy, meridians, reservoirs. So how do you help people, I guess, overcome some of the prejudice around something that's not allopathic, not pharmaceutical in your work? Or do you always meet like folks who are ready to embrace it wholeheartedly?
No, I think it all starts with the breath. I mean, with yoga, there's the pranayama, right? So everybody, recognizes the breath and they can understand the breath. So breathing in and letting out a nice well, how does that make you feel? Just starting there, and then adding the movement. And I often will even share, my story, or people have seen how it has impacted me. And I don't know if we'll have time for me to share part of that because it
Do it
really,
right now. Why don't
okay.
you tell us right now? Yeah, because your story is going to help people understand how many folks will merge allopathic and alternative. And I've got to figure out another word than alternative because it sounds secondary, but it's just there's so many ways in which we all heal. And what works for us today may not be the same tomorrow. And moreover, one of the reasons I wanted you two to join me today was I think there are many, many folks out there who have never heard of Qigong, have never heard of Tai Chi. And I don't care, where you live, what your background is, there's just many folks who've never heard of it. And I think that my goal with Gyno Curious is to really help folks know that there's this abundance of healing modalities out there. And that if you're lucky enough to have a computer where you can type in Tai Chi and learn about it and ask yourself, does that speak to me? Is there something about what Charlessa and Theda are saying that just feels right? And then investigate it further. That's what my hope is for our conversation today. So yes, if you would please share your story, I would be very grateful. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I started out as a yoga teacher. And at one of the places where I got my yoga certification had been exposed to Qigong and to Tai Chi. And, I liked the classes. It felt great. But I really didn't embrace it fully until I had a medical condition. I got certified in, I loved it, but really embraced it in 2019 when I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. At that time, I was a shock because I was doing choreography. At that point, I was a choreographer, I was a music director, and I was moving. I'm always moving. I never had back pain. But at that point, I jumped off the stage and I felt some back pain. And a couple of weeks later, find out that I am diagnosed with this. And I wasn't sure, where to go, what to do at that point, because nobody in my family had had it. And a friend of mine said, hey, there is this wonderful gentleman who I would like to connect you with. He is a Qigong master, and let me introduce you to him. So I got introduced to him. He showed me specifically a program to do for my condition at that time. And, he's from California, and we met over, a Zoom-like platform. And I practiced this every single day, every single day. It was the breath work, it was the movement, but it was being mindful. And that's what's so very important, is to be mindful as you're doing it. And it helped. I found as time went on, the pain was not as profound, and slowly it went away. But what was really telling as I continued this daily practice, I then had to have a stem cell transplant. And I was, stem cell transplant. I've never been sick. I never even had aspirin, really. I mean, I would do this if I had a headache. That's how it was in my life, right? And then all of a sudden I'm taking all
Those
this
listening,
medicine.
she's touching her temples.
I mean, I really didn't, take any medicine. So to have all this medicine now in my body, and then I'm going to have a stem cell transplant, even though it was my own stem cells that were cultivated and grown, they were putting them back in me. And I was going to be in the hospital for a month.
Mm.
So I went in there, and with the practice, and I think this is so important, is the practice really helped with my mindset. Now, I am a social worker, a licensed social worker, so I've done a lot of work on myself emotionally over the years, right? But still, this was a tough thing. And I believe that keeping my focus on my practice, my Qigong practice, my movement, my breath, being in the present moment as much as I could be, not what was going to happen tomorrow or what happened in the past, but staying in that moment. So when I had the transplant, I was in, like I said, the hospital for a month. And during that time, Amy, every single day I got up and I did my Qigong practice. And then I felt like I had so much energy. I started to feel really good. Next thing I know, I'm doing pliés, I'm doing tap dancing, I'm moving around, I'm doing and I'm like, where is this coming from? I had brought my music with me, of course, and I had my bass guitar, but I had my mentality is what I'm getting to. I was just
Right.
so upbeat. And the funny thing about it is behind me was a hospital door that had a window in it. And unbeknownst to me, the nurses were watching me the entire time. So finally they came in and they were like, I hate to ask, but what are you doing? And I started to explain, the qigong and the tai chi practice I was doing in addition to that. And what was healing for me, not just that I was healing physically, but then I started sharing this practice with the nurses. And it was during COVID. So they were bringing that information home with them as well and sharing it with their families. And the doctors would come in and ask questions. I had a chime in the room. I'd hit the chime and we would breathe to the chime. And the doctors were like, why don't we use this in this hospital? I mean, this is so healing and positive. And so fast forwarded many years later, I had to have a T-cell transplant. And again, I'm like, this worked really well the first time. I'm going to try it this time, the second time. And I've continued my daily practice since. But this last piece I wanted to say is when I was in the hospital for my T-cell transplant, the same thing happened. People were engaged. I was actually in my hospital room teaching nurses how to do qigong. They got off
I love it.
shift. They got off their shift. I'm like, come on in, we'll do it. And I was talking to the chaplain. The chaplain was asking me, like, how are you, on this floor where everybody on this floor is going through some significant medical problems, and most are pretty down and sad and everything. And I said, it really is being in the present moment and being grateful. And what am I grateful for? What is, what am I thankful for? But the other piece that just flew out of my mind was that staying in the present moment was what was important. And when people came in, the joy that it was genuine joy that I was feeling, and being able to share that with them and them receiving that joy was fantastic. The other key, and I'll say this to your listeners, is never watch TV when you're in the hospital, because apparently everyone else was watching TV and I did not have the TV on the whole time I was there. I might watch a little Netflix on my device, but aside from that, truly that made a difference. And also, I never put ownership to, I didn't say it was my multiple myeloma, right? I would say the unwanted visitor. And that was what the chaplain brought to other people, different languaging. But truly coming back to Qigong, it really helped to make me feel good in that present moment every day. And sure, there was the moments like, oh, here I am in the hospital. But then I would bring it back to say, I am grateful. I tell you, I would call myself, do you remember the show, The Bionic Woman? And I was like, I am the bionic woman. I have new parts in me. You know what I mean? And I truly felt that way. I am blessed to be here. And Qigong was a huge factor. So thank you for letting me share that. But truly, that is when I said, Theda, we have got to, take this and bring it to populations. And we agreed and we talked about it. And here we are, all these years later.
I just had this great image where kind of like Alice in Wonderland, where, the doctors and nurses were opening each door of each patient room, and the background colors of most of the rooms were, that awful green that most hospital rooms are painted, or that terrible beige and they open Charlessa's room and it's psychedelic, man. It's just, it's popping. And it's, what you're describing is not about being Pollyannish. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about integrating the mind and the body in a way that is realistic, supportive movement. I have found personally, and I know this with my patients too, when you're feeling really low, either emotionally or physically, all you feel like you really want to do is just sit in like a lump and not do anything. It's kind of a form of rebellion, which is kind of silly because, again, the best way to rebel against that feeling is to move, to dance, to sing, to take a nap, but then wake up and then move again. Your story is so inspiring. So I like this idea that these nurses and doctors and chaplains were all working in a very conventional arena who were being introduced to a different way of coping with cancer. Do you know the science around Qigong and Tai Chi? What science is out there? Are you aware of it? Are there any kind of big studies being done to look at the efficacy?
Absolutely. There are studies being done that are funded by NIH, and you were searching for a different word to alternative, sounding like it was secondary. The word that's being used now is integrative, and
Yeah,
it's so that it's integrated with, it's not an afterthought or an add on, it's integrated with that Eastern and Western coming together for the benefit and actually giving a bigger bang than either on their own. So,
right.
integrative is a term that they actually use with NIH studies. And just to let you know, back with the definition of Tai Chi, Tai Chi may be familiar to many of your listeners as Tai Chi Chuan. Tai Chi Chuan is the martial art.
Ah,
That's the
hmm.
one Chuan is fighting. That's what Chuan is. But ours is Tai Chi without the Chuan, which is inner works. So that's the supreme ultimate of working on yourself inside, not fighting. So,
Mm,
yes, there are studies that are being funded now, actually starting in the 90s. Quite a few studies and meta studies were done of Qigong and other complementary and integrative practices like yoga and mindfulness and meditation. Five main areas where the health benefits accrue for people who do Qigong. First, there's stress reduction. It promotes relaxation and also psychological well being because we move from the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that last one, fawn, people don't know that much about, to the relaxation response, which is from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. And we're able to attend and befriend or rest and digest instead of being continually hyped up on it. So, in addition to stress, there's cardiovascular health. There's an improvement in the vessels of those people who have a regular practice. We'll see that the vessels are dilating so that the blood can move more easily in circulating through the body and to the heart. So anyone who has hypertension, it can lower blood pressure and the heart rate. Also, it enhances the immune function.
mm,
So there's pandemics, there's COVID, there are all kinds of diseases and infections out there. This can boost the immune and the resistance to those infections. Then there's managing chronic pain. That's how I got into it. I have spondylolisthesis. It's a low back problem that can cause incredible pain in the lower back with sciatica coming down the legs all the way to the ankles. And that, as you know, pain can limit activity. And Qigong helped me have more of a range of motion and also lifted my spirits from the depression that pain can cause. So there's
yes,
that. And finally, there's a lot of studies around, especially with seniors, fall prevention and balance. As we get older, sometimes the inner ear has some problems, and we have the tinnitus, and we have the other problems around our proprioception. We don't really know how to stay up as well as we did when we were younger. And you might notice that you stumble a little, you get a little klutzy. Qigong can help you with that. It can help with balancing and preventing falls. So those are the
also
main areas where they've shown
great.
benefit.
Thank you. That's so helpful. We're here again to help our listeners understand these practices. And folks will often say, well, is it medically sound? Is it safe? Is it effective? And so science can help, generate a better understanding of the risk, benefits, and efficacy. Is there anyone listening who shouldn't do Tai Chi or Qigong?
I was just going to say, Qigong can be done anyway. It can be done, and like it can be seated, it could be laying down. You can modify if you have maybe a lower part of your body, the mobility is a little bit compromised, so that you can use your upper part of your body. I mean, you can modify and adjust to make it work for you. So that's where I would say that anyone can do Qigong.
In Qigong, we always say ABCs, always be comfortable. Do what you can,
Mhm.
honor your limitations. So even if you're a little child, a toddler, the moves are simple enough that they can understand them and can do them, and they're not as taxing or rigorous. So even an older person who may have to lie down, and if they can't move, they can imagine it in their minds.
Mhm.
Studies have shown that the mind and the intention plays a huge part in the health benefits and the healing that occur. I think it's for everyone. I think that if anyone who's in an emergency situation, actively bleeding, going through something that's happened, no, call 911. Then after you get out, do your qigong.
Right, right. I could see this being so powerful before and after surgery, like getting people into a healing place pre and post op, certainly healing from cancer, really any major life event. As I said in my introduction, these are practices that anyone can pick up at any point in time. If you didn't pick it up when you were, being taught by Charlessa when you were in elementary school, you can still do it when you're in high school, when you're 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. And that's something that's so important too, because I think particularly women as they age, have been told for far too long that their lives should get narrower and that they can't do the same level of activity and oh, be cautious. And so this issue of balance, I think sometimes people get off balance because of fear, that they're afraid they're going to fall. They're afraid to walk across the street in busy cars, that they've been convinced that they don't have the stamina, the capacity, whatever, to be in a busy world. We live in a world, there's so many devices checking metrics. I mean, everyone I know has a watch that tells them all kinds of information. And I must admit, when I go for a walk, I want to know how many steps I've taken. I'm curious too. But at the same time, what I like about these practices and the way you describe them is it kind of takes you away from the rigidity of the metrics, even though we know it's affecting the cardiovascular health. It's affecting probably the microbiome and immune capacity. So we could probably measure the benefits. I'm sure some of the science you've described does that. But if you can be in a room and kind of put the watch away and put the computer away, and even though what I'm hearing also you can do is do all this on Zoom, which is fantastic, but that it just allows you to be in your mind as opposed to your watch. So it's good. It's really good.
And even if you can be outside, it's even better, because that
Oh,
that is the best, is to be able to do these practices outside in nature, connecting with the beautiful, our area in particular, as well as in DC. There are those spots that you're out there with the trees and the light and just breathing and taking it all in. Or walking, you can walk and do Qigong as well. So that's true. These practices are inspirational, and they just feel good, Amy. They just feel good.
please.
Studies that are coming out of NIH do focus on not only self-report, so the participants are interviewed, but they do check biomarkers. They take the blood pressure, baseline, midway, at the end, and look at those for indications of improvement and impact and efficacy. Both Charlessa and I are participating in NIH-funded research studies, and the one I'm in, one cohort just ended that will have their biomarkers tested. These are older people who are living with HIV. We're
Mm.
also providing short and long videotapes for women with mobility issues. So it's all seated. So for those women who say, "Oh, I can't do anything. I can't. I'm in the wheelchair." We've made a whole set of them, and they're curated, and they will have access. This is in the study, and we will also have those available on our website for others. And it's funny you should bring up all of these measurements and watches and ways to keep track, because Qigong is to take you away, as Charlessa said, not thinking of the past, not the future, but the present moment focus. And by doing that, we kind of right then lower our stress. Just a big exhale and a sigh of relief. But it's funny, one of our teachers is working with an IT person to make an app for a Google Watch, Apple Watch, and it's going to be qigong oriented, and
Oh,
it'll give
funny.
some feedback, and then they tell them, well, you're kind of stressed out, you need to stop, go outside and do some stretch. I'm not sure exactly what it'll say. He's just concerned that the people who will want to do qigong might not have Apple Watches. I said, yes, they do, they will, making it.
Well, I love it. You're trying to again kind of embrace all communities, and whether they've got a watch, whether they're in a wheelchair, whether they're on probation, etc. So I guess I'd love to hear about this wellness essentials venture you two have created together, and because I think it interfaces with the question of like, how do you bring this to communities that might otherwise never have heard of these things, whether it's financial barriers, racial barriers, gender barriers, geographic barriers. I mean, they exist. Zoom helps, but we got to get the information out there. And that's one of the reasons Gyno Curious is talking to you today. Because if someone's listening in the middle of this country or in another country where they tap into Gyno Curious and they're like, I'm going to look into this. So tell us about your new venture.
Well, I'm going to let Charlessa tell you the origin story, but I'll just
Okay.
tell you that we are creating a space that's accessible, that values inclusivity, representation, and holding that space as one of the few, if not the only, women owned, African American owned wellness business that's bringing Qigong, yoga, meditation, yoga for children, as well as empowered relief. It's a Stanford University developed pain management skills program. It's a one class for 2 hours, and it trains your brain away from pain. And we found each of these so powerful in our lives, we wanted to play it forward to all of those folks who are out there searching and suffering, and let them see from our example and by our accessibility, because it's donation only. We don't have a charge for our services, and try it out for themselves from the comfort of their own home.
Mm,
So Charlessa can tell you
sign me up.
how it happened.
Great.
Well, we met in 2019 at a Healer Within board of directors meeting. And at that point, we just connected. I mean, the two of us started sharing our backgrounds and our visions. And we met again after that time in 2020 in Florida. And at that point, we knew that we needed to come together and to make this happen. And we feel it's so important to help people activate the healer within, right? Give them self-healing tools that they can put in their toolbox and pick and choose which ones work, and the other ones they can just keep in the toolbox or throw away or whatever they want. But we want to provide a variety of options for them. And what is really neat about Theda and I is that we work really well together. We have fun together, and we have a lot in common that has helped us to bring forth this amazing healing venture of the two of us. And as of April, we are now officially a business. We are an LLC.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it's the same thing. We do, the online offerings, but we're also doing community offerings. And that's important to free community offerings. We have one coming up in DC on August 1st. We'll have another one in the Hudson Valley in the fall sometime. And it's just anyone that wants to come, they don't even have to sign up. Last year I had somebody off Route 9G, near where we were. Just they saw what we were doing, they pull in, they said, "Can we join?" We said, "Absolutely, come on in," because we want to
Fantastic.
get out to as many people. And that's why we really appreciate being on your podcast today, Amy, because we do want people to know the value of Tai Chi, of Qigong, and how it can really make an impact in their lives and help them so that in times when they might think, well, maybe I should go take this medicine, let me stop for a moment and let me try. And then, like maybe for a headache, for instance, nothing major, obviously, but, something, well, let me see. Let's do some breathing. Try to do some of the, the tapping things that, we do in Qigong and see if that helps. And if it doesn't, okay. I mean, as there's a place for both, right? It's important. But it's important to also know that there are so many things that you can do that can help you with the self-healing. And the self-massage that Theda mentioned earlier, that's a part of our practice as well as the movement and breath work.
We've been reaching out to other communities, actually up in your area, in Hudson, New York. There is a recovery center, addiction recovery, and they were very interested. They're oriented towards mindfulness and meditation anyway. And they wanted to train their peer recovery counselors in methods of breathing, movement, meditation, so they can then use them with their clients and their peers when they're in crisis. So we did a training of their peer counselors, and since then, they've continued the practice there and have offered group practice to all of the participants at the center. That's one of the communities. Our constituencies are, we said everybody, but one of the communities that we're really focusing on, people in transition, being in recovery from before and after surgery, people transitioning into the older wisdom ages, and folks who are really looking for a way to empower themselves to get hold of their dysregulated nervous system and get it back to a place of calm.
And,
Yeah.
and and also bringing it into the school system is just, wonderful for the students as well as the teachers to help with test anxiety and, the social issues. There's so many things that can make this practice accessible for the students as well as the teachers. And in fact, I had just spoken to a teacher about this past weekend at a conference or a workshop that we were at, saying how that they can bring it into their classroom to help in times when the class is, anxious, and what tools that she can use, but also the tools when she's feeling a little anxious.
Exactly. I mean, I love that you're describing the kind of the healing from start to finish, from the healer to those that are being healed. A part of what I've always maintained is a problem with our current medical system is that most of the clinicians, most of the people who work at the front desk, they're feeling ill themselves. They're feeling stressed themselves. They're not loving their jobs anymore because the system has become so difficult. And as a result of their ill health, they're not able to help the patients who come already in ill health. So if you can create community of healers, literally, where everyone's kind of healing each other without sounding silly, but, from the get-go, walking into an environment where there's an understanding that in order for us to heal, we have to heal ourselves and then each other. And there's a kind of a global oversight that's going on with this.
That's right.
That's so great. So great.
Can I just say one more thing real quick?
Of course.
When I was in the hospital this last time for the T-cell transplant, there was a doctor who embraced what I was doing. And I told him I wanted to come back and give to the nurses free of charge, give them a practice that they can use for themselves. And he said, absolutely, I am 100% behind you because we need this. So me being there and being able to show what this is about really spurred him on to say, yeah, like he didn't know anything about it beforehand. I mean, maybe he
Right.
had learned a little bit here or there, but he really hadn't embraced it until I was able to share that with him. And that's a perfect example of what we want to do.
And I think
Great.
that's an important example because a lot of people hear about and say, oh, that's a pseudoscience, or oh, that's this. And they lean back from it and are not leaning into it. So when doctors particularly, and those in the Western training, they didn't have any of that. And they're taught to kind of poo-poo it. But when they see in person someone benefiting, and there's an energetic, you could walk in a room and you could feel an energy. Charlessa's hospital room was energy. People will they were they were punching out and then coming into her room. So usually they're running out of the hospital to get out or get to
That's right,
work.
right.
So we listened to that, and we have developed a workplace wellness program that we first want to beta test in Montessori schools because there's a
Oh,
lot of
great.
overlap between the Montessori system and we do have an invitation to work with the staff of a Montessori school, two Montessori schools here in DC. So that wellness program is applicable and transferable and can be tailored to any workplace, be it a hospital or a senior center. So we're very excited about launching that and moving it out into the communities that we serve.
Great. So those listening, they're like really intrigued now. They want to know, how do they access Theda and Charlessa's Wellness Essentials? Is there a website? Is there on Instagram? How do they find you?
Well, our website is Theda and Charlessa we.com. So that's TheDeandCharlessawe.com. Our names.
Great. And that will be on the show notes too, so people won't be able to get
Good.
to it. Great.
Great.
Great. So
And yeah, we are also on Facebook as well as Instagram
And
great.
YouTube.
and
Great. So we are coming to the end, and I just am so grateful for your wisdom, and what you're giving to the world is really incredible. We're living in a time where generosity is not often demonstrated, and greed seems to be the pervasive poison. And so I just want to honor you both and just say thank you, because what you can share with the world through your experiences, through your own journeys, and of course, all you've learned, and sharing it with, sounds like so many diverse communities, is really admirable.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so
So
much.
it's my pleasure. So the last question I have for you, and I always end kind of curious this way, is I want you to tell me about one thing in your life outside of work that gives you pleasure.
Oh, I can start with that one. I know right off the bat, I have been an amateur dancer of the dances, music, and songs of the African diaspora, going to Cuba, Jamaica, Brazil, learning these dances. And that brings me so much joy, learning those dances and doing them and dancing regularly. That's
Oh,
that's that's what brings me joy.
great, 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 great.
Well,
Charlessa?
that's part of mine as well because I love
Oh,
to dance and
we
she
can all
does.
dance.
We
Really?
can
Okay.
Also, it's been doing things with my family. We like to hike. We like to do so many things together as a family. Fun stuff. We've even gone to clubs together and everything. So being outdoors with my family and our new puppy dog. Yes, we have a little golden retriever that's now an addition to our family. So we have a lot of fun. And I'm an electric bass player, so I love to play my bass. I guess that's it. That was one.
Excellent.
I'm sorry, that was more than one.
Oh, you get to have them. And I wish for both of you plenty of time, space, and opportunity to do all of those things.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I also want to thank Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud, my co-producers, and to David Hoffman, my editor, and to the Epicurean, who just every week seems to be willing to have Radio Free Rhiniecliff in their space. And we're so grateful. If you're ever down in the hamlet of Rhiniecliff, come on in because they have just delicious stuff. So thanks to those who are listening. Please be well. And I want to remind you to listen to your instincts and your intuitions. They are the greatest of teachers, not to be ignored.
Hey, thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.